Okay, so taking the piss out of Leeds is cathartic. It's fun too, but it does have a point. Hi, this is Mike. Welcome to my vlog about football in general, Burnley FC in particular, a vlog that due to illness is 75% less topical than it was when I wrote it. Oh well. Anyway, this week is the Premier League and the EFL AGMs, which sounds really boring. But what actually happens is officially teams move in and teams move out of the respective Premier League and the Championship. It's kind of like an administrative process. Teams who are relegated from the Premier League have to resign and give their share in the Premier League back. They then apply to join the EFL. The EFL promoted teams, they resign from the English Football League and apply to join the Premier League and get a share in the Premier League as a company. That is kind of how promotion and relegation works on an administrative level. Now the Premier League does always give you drama on the last day, even if it's only at the bottom of the table. The destiny of the title is usually decided well before the final game of the season. Spoiler for next season, Man City win again. And the Champions League, there's usually some fake drama about who's going to finish third or fourth, but who cares? It makes absolutely no difference. Whereas down the bottom where the action is, this year was no exception. Everton escaped yet again, which although relegation would probably have been deserved, I was kind of happy about, because they are basically building Burnley on Merseyside. Plus they give us 25 million quid every couple of years, so I kind of want that to happen. Southampton go down as this year's basket case club, the one team that never seems to get going and then just shoots itself in the foot anyway. And Leicester go down in the position that is always filled by that one club that doesn't realise it's actually in a relegation battle until it's far too late. But the final place, the final relegation place, most deservedly, hilariously and brilliantly went to Leeds United. Now I could spend the entirety of this video taking the piss out of Leeds, but I won't. Well, not all of it. Leeds offer a number of valuable lessons for any club, not just Burnley, but any club in the Premier League and the Football League, in how not to go about football in general, let alone being a member of the Premier League. When Clarets went down last season, I remember feeling much like everyone else at Turf Moor on that day. I was deflated, I was tired, I was disappointed. There was a lot of negative emotions, but we applauded our team off the pitch, knowing that they had given everything and just simply not being good enough. That's how we approached relegation, because we were realistic about it. But seeing the pictures of the Leeds fans last week, they were angry, they were livid. They were abusing their own players and giving them all the usual hand signals that fans of other teams have known to come and love. There was no self-reflection, it was just anger at losing what they consider to be their rightful place at the top table. Because as anyone involved with Leeds United will tell you, Leeds are a big club. Not only that, they are a big club with a proud history. But are they really? Imagine this football club. A football club that spent 16 of the last 20 years outside of the Premier League, 3 of them in Division 1. That club then got promoted to the Premier League and lasted 3 seasons up there, including surviving one last day relegation before finally going down again only on the last day. You would probably consider that club to have had a little bit of a good run, and dropping down to the Championship is an opportunity to reset, to take stock and to go again. I've just described the last 20 years of Leeds United. What you wouldn't think is that midway through the season, said club would declare relegation, and I quote, impossible. And their chairman even issued a personal statement apologising for relegation. I will say it again, 3 Premier League seasons in the last 20. That's 1 more than Blackpool. And to be fair, this attitude isn't just the chairman or the fans, it's the media and the players too. Patrick Bamford scored a few goals in the Premier League, thought he had made it, and embarked on a post-match slagging of all the clubs that he failed on loan at, despite those clubs not actually saying anything about him in the first place. And now there are queues around the block to buy tickets for the second leg of the Bamford Victory Tour. New dates just added, visiting Rotherham, Plymouth and Millwall. In my opinion, backed up by reams of evidence, Leeds is the most entitled club in English football. They think they deserve to be at the top table. They don't have rivalries with Bradford or Huddersfield or Sheffield United. No, they're at the top table. Their rivalry is with Manchester United. It's a bit like the Burnley Stockport thing in that, yeah, you're on the list, but only because there are 10 clubs on there. In fact, if there were to be a Champions League of Europe's most entitled clubs, Leeds will probably get to the semi-final, where they will be knocked out by Real Madrid, yet still go on telling everyone that they deserve to have won anyway. The facts do not back up Leeds' opinion of themselves. You could say that Leeds are an established major Premier League club. Well, they've had the same number of seasons in the top flight as Sunderland, Crystal Palace and Middlesbrough. They are 2 behind Fulham, 3 behind Blackburn, 9 behind Southampton. And that is in the entire 32-year history of the Premier League. I'll say it again, 3 Premier League seasons in the last 20 years. That's less than Norwich. And if you go, well, they have been a top flight club for most of their history. 53 seasons in the First Division and Premier League combined. 7 less than Burnley, 15 less than Sheffield Wednesday, 33 less than Sunderland, and I haven't mentioned other clubs who have spent more time in the top flight than Leeds, like Bolton and Leicester, Derby, Stoke, Blackburn. And yeah, that's before we get to the European stuff. Leeds did win a European Fairs Cup, so did Manchester City, back when they were inept and before they got bought out by a petrochemical state. So did Newcastle, back when they were inept and got bought out by a petrochemical state. Leeds have lost a European Cup final, they've lost a Cup Winners' Cup final. In terms of European competition, that makes them less successful than Ipswich. Okay, so taking the piss out of Leeds is cathartic. It's fun too, but it does have a point. Relegation from the Premier League is a risk for 13 of their 20 clubs. Every season, 13 clubs start by looking backwards at the drop and not forwards to the European places. That is because the biggest risk and the biggest threat to those 13 clubs' place in the Premier League is taking it for granted. There is a common thread for many clubs that get relegated from the Premier League. They largely do so because they forget what got them there in the first place. They've built a structure and identity that takes them into the Premier League. And then after a couple of years, when they think they are safe, they start worrying about the drop and panicking and replacing managers. The players stop being the sort of players that got them there. The new manager comes in with their own style and his need for his own players, and he discards those players who got them there in the first place. And then it becomes like Wile E. Coyote, trying to ignore gravity. Ultimately, forgetting where we came from is the reason that Burnley went down last season. We had a tight-knit squad, we had a conveyor belt of players who were bought to be showcased and sold. Michael Keane, Danny Ings, Kieran Trippier, Andre Gray. The funds were there to be reinvested carefully and sensibly, but that conveyor belt stopped. The money went on players who the manager didn't want to play, and the club drifted from 7th to 10th to 17th to relegated. And you can look in the Championship and see plenty of teams who are in the Premier League and they just cocked it up through their own hubris. Watford, Swansea, Bolton, Stoke, Blackburn. Everton are another example. They've spent £500 million on players in the last few years. Everton, who have hardly had a sniff of an FA Cup, let alone Europe, spending £500 million on players. They bought James Rodriguez, for God's sake. And look where it got them. You know, they're addicted to the big-name manager, from Carlo Ancelotti to Frank Lampard via Rafa Benitez, which is one hell of a journey. And now they have a mishmash of players and regular fire sales just to pay the bills, with the manager at the helm now, who they should have had 3 seasons ago. Once clubs start that nosedive, it takes a long time and a lot of effort to pull out of it. League One of the Championship is littered with former Premier League greats. And we see clubs who will not look in the mirror until it is too late. Man City were too big to go down. They were too big to fail until they were losing to Bury. And Burnley went on that journey too. They were founder members of the Football League. Titles, cups, trips into Europe, massive support, big stadium, a club with history, a club that was too big to fail, a club that did not face up to the reality of its situation right up until the morning of the Orient game. A club has to have a realistic identity. This isn't necessarily how they play football. After all, Vincent Kompany has turned Burnley's style around 180 degrees, but he has kept the essential Burnleyness of the squad and the club. Teams and styles do change and they do evolve, but clubs need to keep that solid identity, a grounding in reality that their players and their staff and their fans buy into. But what is Leeds' identity? Like I say, look at the stats and the reality. Does that tie up with Leeds' opinion of themselves? Any club that goes from Marcelo Bielsa to Sam Allardyce in 14 months has no clue what it is doing. It is not prepared for the worst. It has not fixed the roof while the sun shines. It took its rightful place at the top for granted. They didn't plan for Bielsa leaving, despite the fact that he had already gone for a year longer in the job than in any of his previous 12 club stints. And oh, by the way, remember when we sacked Deitch and people were saying we should have got Sam Allardyce in? Find those people and laugh at them mercilessly, because they paid Big Sam £500,000 for 4 weeks' work and got one more point in the job than I would have, and I'd have charged half. Yet Leeds go on like they're some kind of perennial established Premier League giant, to the point, by the way, that their chief executive wrote in their programme last year saying that the Premier League should not have to hand out more money to clubs below them in the pyramid, and too much government regulation was harming successful businesses like, well, Leeds United. That is advocating pulling up the ladder from a club that at that point had just 2 Premier League seasons in the last 20 years. That's less than Reading. Now they're receiving parachute payments. Now they're finding out that their owner went behind the rest of the board's back and offered Ellen Road as collateral for a bank loan that he was taking out to buy Sampdoria. I think those handouts and government regulation might be needed right now, don't you? But then maybe they get another new owner after welcoming the convicted tax evader with opening arms, and then welcoming this guy who's trying to sell up now. Remember when Red Bull were rumoured to be looking at an English club? Red Bull, who had taken over Salzburg and Leipzig and basically destroyed that club, their colours, their fan base, their identity, and replaced it with their own marketing exercise. They turned them into marketing arms for a fizzy drink that had no relationship to the historic Salzburg and Leipzig clubs that they had bought. And when it was rumoured that they were coming over to England and looking at a club, who was front and centre, showing an ankle at them? Leeds United. Leeds can continue to be the football equivalent of the guy on Facebook who says that he's rich and successful when in reality he's neither. But next season, a grim reality sets in. Sure, their fans, their chairman, their players will tell you that they're the biggest club in the Championship. Leicester. But next season, Leeds United will have less revenue, less budget, less exposure, less talented players, less eyeballs watching them worldwide, and less relevance in the Premier League than Luton Town. If you've got any comments about this video, please feel free to leave them down below and I will respond where I can. If you liked it, click the like button. And if you like what I do, have a look around the rest of the channel and click subscribe to be notified when I produce new content.